Hi, it's Andrew. It's Thursday, so you know that means that it's time for me to fold laundry and chat with you. This is a series where I just chat. I don't have a script. I have a dream that I'm planning on sharing. I always do, but I don't really know exactly how it will unfold or what other things I might disclose. I have made a couple of, parasocial friends on social media. And and I feel really connected to them. One of them recently had his house burned down in the fires in Los Angeles. I've never met him before, but I've told people about the things that he says, sometimes on his channel, or more likely like an adventure that he'll go on, or a taste that he articulates that he prefers. And I really like the vibe that his husband and he have together. So I don't know. I felt like we were friends, and he's not the first parasocial relationship I have. There's someone who's on, do they call it BookTube? YouTube that's about books, who will often like talk about some books that are nominated for prizes. And although there is a perfect world where I would just like have endless time to read books and I would read all the books, all of them, the actual world I live in does not allow me to read that many books. So it's actually pretty important to me that I read books of substance and that will be meaningful to me. And so usually I find that like the nominees for the Booker Prize, it's not like I love every single one of them, but they always introduce me to something interesting and helpful. And sometimes, like after I'm done with a book, I'll read some things that the author has said, and the author will recommend an older author, so one that's not a prize nominee right now because they're dead or something like that, and then I'll read that book, and so it's sort of like a process. Like you get into these conversations, not literal conversations, but they're conversations that happen outside of you. You're kind of an outsider, but you are getting introduced to the conversations, and then you want to go back and listen to all the things that have already been said. So two things. I remembered just now that I forgot to bring over my the little tray that I use to help fold my sweaters and my shirts in a uniform way. And secondly, my dad just texted me like a little like notification came out of the side of my screen. Oh, there's another one. This one's from my daughter. Oh, so it looks like there's a group text going on. So that might just be like something else that happens. I mean, that's actually one of my favorite things that can possibly happen in a YouTube video, and that is to be interrupted by some unexpected thing that requires you to respond to it in a meaningful way. I guess this notion of being improvisation in the moment which you are presented, as opposed to just sticking slavishly to the script, is a very strong value of mine. I do have two dreams. Did I mention that I have two dreams to tell you? Also have a dog sitting right here, laying right here, Oreo. He's been in other episodes. He's below the screen right now, but you might see my dog. I'm gonna go get that. Tray and bring it back here, which I know this is like a really bad idea in terms of programming, because I know that like people who carefully watch, when people stop watching a video would say, well, if you go off screen and nothing is happening, people are going to stop watching the video. So I'm inviting you to watch the screen in a different way, in a way that does not include me. Think about whether you have some questions, and I would encourage you to put your questions in the response to this YouTube before you even finish watching the video. I mean, I know that there are these prescribed ways that like typically you wouldn't leave something until the end of the video, but I love the idea that like you would interact with the video as if it were unfolding in real time, and you'd say things, and I'd end up saying something about them or ignoring you completely, and you'd come back on with a second comment, and you'd be like, why didn't you answer me? And you couldn't hold me accountable for it because I was done recording a long time ago. But on the other hand, you know that I'm going to read the comments, and so then who knows what might emerge as a result. Maybe a whole nother series. I'm open to that. Are you? There's one more embarrassing thing that might happen to me, and maybe you can guess what it is in the comments when I stand up to go over there and get the tray. That makes it sound like I accidentally am not wearing pants, and that like I'm just going to be in my underwear when I stand up, and you're going to know. But that's not what it is, so I'll be right back. Here's my tray. Thank you for staying. Did you scroll past the break when I was gone? Did you take a guess below about what it was? You can pause the video anytime, right now. I didn't think about that. You could pause the video right now and write something to me. Did you do it? Okay, so I had these two dreams on, both of them on the night of January the 20th of 2024. And so I named them, I always name them. And it says 2 dreams about rehab. But that's a terrible title. I keep giving you interactive things that maybe you'll want to do. Maybe you'll want to rename these dreams. I mean, they're 2 distinct dreams, but they happened in one night. And so I think that there must be some consonances between them. Oh, I can think of what they might be right now. But the title should refer to those. And this title is terrible. Pretend I never said that, because it's wrong. Okay. So in the first dream, I was with my children, who were children, and with my partner at the time, and we were about to take a trip across. It was nighttime, it was cold, and we were taking a trip across the northern boundary waters. There had been a war in the United States, and we hoped that it was over, and we had fled to Canada, and now we were returning. So, you know, that somewhat epic in scope and structure. And while we were riding the ferry, it was very much like the Staten Island ferry, you know, like a big ferry where lots of people were, not a car ferry, but I sort of remember a lot of like luggage, which that ferry's not really built for luggage, and you couldn't check your luggage, so it was almost like people had encampments. But we decided to stroll around the ferry and sort of like see what was going on and see all the people were, and we were surprised to run into these people that we had known many, many years ago when we were in our 20s. And for the purposes of this storytelling, because, you know, I don't use people's actual names, because it's, you know, the internet. So these 2 people are going to be called Bob and Beth Ann. What last name could I give them? I don't think I need any. I'll just call them Bob and Beth Ann. And so we were very surprised to run into Bob and Beth Ann. We didn't know that they had been in Canada. We hadn't seen them. And what's much stranger than the fact that we ran into them on the ship is that I have no idea what would have prompted my dream makers to select them, to cast them in this dream, because I can't remember having had any conscious thoughts about them in years. Like, the thing that would be the closest thing that I would have a conscious thought to is that they lived in this house that was very close to the church that my father was the minister of, and I attended all through high school, and then a little bit as a young adult. And they lived in this house only for a small time, and I really loved the house. It was an old house, and it had those wood shingles, the kind of like square ones that overlap, and it was I'm not sure that I remember. Oh, it's a colonial. Yeah, it was a colonial style house. And it was like, the wood was stained very dark. It was very beautiful with white trim. It's very beautiful in my mind, but it might not have been anyway, in real life. And one of my most poignant like moments of thinking about that house was on a night where the youth group at this church had watched a movie about how much satanic influence was in rock and roll music. It was quite a movie. Of course, they kind of did this sort of normative satanic panic things where they played the backwards, Eagles song, Hotel California. Wait, is it even backwards? Yeah, it's backwards. Hotel California. And then they like, look at these lyrics, it's very clear, they're inviting Satan. And I'm sure like there's other satanic panic stuff that I don't really remember, because the weird thing for me was that I, at that point in my life, was still not even, maybe I was listening to a little bit of rock and roll music, but I was so cloistered and so eager to please everyone during those years of my life that I really just obeyed the rules. Also, in my particular house, it wasn't a house that felt full of rules. It was a house that felt full of freedom and exploration. There were always many, record albums and books, and this was before VCRs. They arrived in my teenage years. And we always had access to these things. We would go to libraries, we went to concerts, and lots of that was classical music. Some of it was Christian contemporary music, but there was no rock and roll, not even Christian rock and roll. So I was in some ways kind of mortified by all the things they were uncovering in the movie, and they even suggested that like the music itself had Satan in it, because it had come, and I'm sorry, because I feel like I have to trigger warn you on this one, because it's so crazy what I'm about to say, but it's like really what they said. They said clearly it was satanic, but because it had sounds from African drum beats, which were rooted in Satan worship. If you've ever heard something more racist than that, well, then you probably just live in America, and that's normal. But it's normal and awful. But that was what they said, and they showed how the 2 and 4 beat emphasis made you want to wriggle your pelvis, whereas a 1 and a 3 beat made you want to march with joy for the Lord. So it was an inarguable proposition. And so I did also decide to, so afterwards we had an album burning, and there was a dumpster, and people would throw their cassette tapes. Really, there were no albums, it was just cassette tapes. Maybe some people were throwing away their 8 tracks, but that was kind of like another era. So we were throwing our cassette tapes in, and I threw in you know what, I actually think that, I don't think I did. I think if I had thrown anything in, it would have been like Corey Hart. I wear my sunglasses at night, that Corey Hart, and Never Surrender. Well, I guess I surrendered. And if I did throw that in, which is possible that I did, I went out and bought another one later and regretted it. Regretted that I had thrown that away. But I remember during the flames, it was so dramatic and exciting, how many people were filled with the love of God. And I just kept looking at how the flames kind of like made a light against their house, and I thought it was beautiful. Anyway, that was not, see, this is an example of how these stories are not planned. So we talked to these people who we hadn't seen for a long time, and their son, Stan, was with them. Oh, this is right. We didn't know anything about this, but now we found out. And they told us that Stan had been convicted of a crime. Here's the weird thing. Stan, in real life, was actually the younger brother of Bob, and Stan was my age. But in this case, he's their son. I think they were only maybe 5 or 6, at the most 10 years older than me. I don't really remember. And so Stan had been convicted of a crime, and the courts had created this option where if you did a voluntary memory wipe, your charges and your convictions would be dropped. And so they had gone over to Canada, which is the only place where this memory wipe surgery was available, in order to kind of give him this second chance at life. And he just was staring pretty blank-faced at us. That's the first dream. In the second dream, I'm going to tell this dream as if I were not in the dream ego position. Do you know that term? It's something that I learned from the Jungians, who I listened to their podcast called This Jungian Life. I used to listen to it a lot. I don't listen to it as much anymore. I do recommend it though. So the dream ego is like the point of view that you see the dream through. It's you in the dream. Some people they aren't themselves in their dream. So in that case, like if I were my brother in a dream, then the dream ego would be my brother. And I would like maybe even see myself in that dream. That's not happened to me very often. That has happened a few times. So anyway, I'm going to describe this dream as if I were not in the dream ego. So I'm going to talk about a man and his wife and his 2 children, who are all together visiting some close family friends of theirs. And their children are 11 and 12. And we'll call the man Aaron, and we'll call the woman Annalie. And we'll just call the children the son and the daughter. So the daughter is 12 and the son is 11. So the 11-year-old was sweet and funny and came up with crazy schemes all the time. And one of the things that was difficult for this couple, Aaron and Annalie, was that they had a memory of everything that would happen to their family for the rest of their lives. They had a memory of it, but they were living their lives as if it had not happened yet. And so they constantly would have to remember to try to, if at all possible, bracket that and be open to the moment in a way that allowed the moment to unfold in a genuine manner, and maybe even with the hope, I don't really know, that things that they had regrets about, memories that fell into the regret category, could in some way be altered, although, is that the way it works? I'm tending to say no. I'm tending to, these days, feel like time flows, over incidents like rocks in the stream, instead of what are those called? Little parts of the stream that separate. Right, like the idea is, if you believe that like Heraclitus, that you dip your foot in the water. How did this work? That you never can dip your foot in the same water because it's always moving. I think this is all falling apart. I'm not going to give up on it though. So there's one way of thinking about like time travel, where like if like Marty McFly, your mother accidentally falls in love with you and you go back in time, then she will no longer marry your father and you'll disappear, right? Like that time is in fact constantly turning on in radical ways. Fate is turning on in radical ways based on the actions of individuals and things that happen. So I'm suggesting the opposite view, and that is that like many different choices get made, but they don't change the shape of the river. The river keeps going. Even if someone like gets out of their boat and moves 15 rocks, it doesn't change very much about the flow of the river. Maybe some very minor things, but definitely none of the major things. So the son took it upon himself to plan the whole birthday party for their friends. And Aaron and Annalie had this nagging fear that he had maybe made some inappropriate choices, because they remembered that much later in his life, when he's a teenager, he would get involved with drug use and even become an addict. And so they didn't want to remember that, but they couldn't help it. And they're sort of like thinking, well, what if he, you know, in his roguish, impish, impulsive way, decided to spike the punch, you know, let's say. So they very carefully but on the other hand, they're so proud of him that he's taken this initiative to do all these things. And so they're very carefully examining all the things that he has put together for their friend's daughter's birthday party. And so when they examine them all, it seems like everything's fine. And they sort of have this great feeling of relief. And as they're sort of ready to pivot into the next thing, suddenly Annalie sees something, remembers something, hears something that makes her very sure that the powder on the puppy cake is laced with cocaine. I have a question for you, dear viewers. Is there really such a thing as puppy cake? This is something that was in my dream. I don't think I know what puppy cake is. Is puppy cake a real thing? Please stop the video. Type your answers below. Is puppy cake real? If you want to link me to like a recipe for it, that would be great. And so Annalie was like immediately like super triggered and overwhelmed, and her husband Aaron totally understood. But they had this dynamic in their relationship where when crisis emerged, often Annalie would worry more and would want to take action, feel like action must be taken. And Aaron tended to react in a kind of like, in a way that was more like, okay, I'm not saying no, but I'm saying let's be really super logical and make sure we've thought about all the options and think about this in a really calm manner. So that can be really exasperating if you've ever known someone like Aaron. And you know that things need to happen like right now and there's something terribly wrong. So this kind of escalated the conversation, and Annalie just said, I can't take this anymore. And she started to get ready to leave. And before she was leaving, all of a sudden, another Annalie, her doppelganger, arrived. And as soon as Annalie saw the other Annalie, she rose and she hugged her. She was so relieved, and she hugged her back. They clearly had this incredibly supportive, nurturing relationship. They were wearing identical Cedarville College sweatshirts. So I don't use names of people, but I'll use names of an institution, right? So Cedarville College is a real place. It's a very, very fundamentalist Baptist college where I went to college. It was very strange that both Annalise had this sweatshirt on. So, oh my goodness, I haven't folded a single thing. I'm so compelled by these stories. Ridiculous. Okay. Oh, look at this. I took off my favorite charcoal cashmere sweater, and I just took this shirt off with it, which is such a great shirt. Not really, it's, you know, like a cheap shirt, but obviously it says Jean-Michel Basquiat. And ironically, just before I made this video, my dad sent me a picture of me and my brother and him all sitting in this teepee that we discovered that had been randomly built in the woods. And I'm looking very like this, and I'm wearing this shirt, which is also layers and layers and layers. I actually was at the Hirshhorn Museum this past week and saw a bunch of Basquiat work and loved it. Decided to become a visual artist instead. Is it too late to change my career? Don't put that below in the comments. No, that's the only thing, watch, to look at in the comments. So, where were we? I gotta fold. I have so much folding to do. I'm gonna have to make like a whole nother episode. Fold. And we pull out the tray. We fold the sweater one more time. We put it right there. Lovely. How about a pair of jeans? So the first Annalie left, and the other Annalie went straight into the garage and took out this Fisher-Price garage. If you're from the 70s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's that 3-story garage, and there was a thing that came around. It's the Fisher-Price Little People. Do you remember? She started playing with that along with my daughter, along with Aaron's daughter, and playing happily. And Aaron was so confused by this that he went over and he said to this second Annalie, I'm sorry, can you explain to me what's going on? Like, I don't think that I know who you are. I'm not sure what's going on here. And the second Annalie looked at him, and she looked both perplexed and like not really much, like she cared very much. You know, she's like, why would I talk to this guy? And she didn't. She just like just went right back to playing. Is that the end? Oh no, I don't remember. I opened too many threads, right? Did I say it was January 20th? Have you ever seen me do this before? These are the little books that I keep them in. Who are you? Aaron confronted the new Annalie. She looked at him blankly, as if she had no idea who he was. Or why should she care? Aaron went to go see if the first Annalie or his son were anywhere. He wanted to see if the son was okay, and he wanted to maybe look into whether he had indeed used cocaine on the puppy cake. But Aaron could not find either one of them, even though he searched the entire house. And the house was the yellow parsonage, which is the first house in my memory, and which I have not been in since I was 8 years old? 7 years old? One of those. Well, I'm about at the time where it's a perfect time to end. So now is the time where if you feel like I left something unanswered, you can go back and add another comment below. And I really can't wait to hear what you'll bring. I can't wait.